Welcome to Black History Matters 2024. This is the fourth installment of an educational series produced by the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum. These short educational videos are meant to provide an introduction to topics important to our understanding of Black American history, but also the larger history of the African diaspora across the Americas and the world. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's episode, Winds of Change, the Era of African Independence Movements. The age of decolonization in Africa, spanning from the mid to the late 20th century, marked a significant period of political upheaval and transformation across the continent. During this time, numerous African countries gained independence from European colonial powers, leading to the emergence of new nation-states and the reshaping of political, social, and economic landscapes on the continent. In this video, I will speak briefly to a few specific examples of these movements for decolonization and independence, in order to highlight the ways in which different regions and people of Africa conceived of their liberation differently, but also how many unifying factors, such as the shared histories of colonialism, played a tremendous role in shaping the African continent of today. To situate this historically, the end of World War II marked a shift to decolonization as the war weakened colonial powers such as the UK and France, fostering the idea of sovereignty and self-determination among colonized people who sought independence from imperial rule, thereby challenging the legitimacy and authority of colonial regimes. After all, how could countries like the UK and US claim to be fighting for freedom from fascism when half of the world was living under colonial rule? The first example we'll discuss in this video is that of Kenya. Kenya gained independence from British colonial rule on December 12, 1963, after years of anti-colonial resistance and armed struggle against British colonial forces. British colonialism in Kenya began in the late 19th century when the British East Africa Company established a presence in the region. This presence expanded with the construction of the Uganda Railway, which linked the Indian Ocean port of Mombasa to the interior of East Africa. The British colonial administration in Kenya enforced policies that favored European settlers and marginalized the indigenous population, leading to widespread discontent and resistance. The Mau Mau uprising, which erupted in the 1950s, played a pivotal role in Kenya's journey to independence. The Mau Mau, a militant nationalist movement predominantly composed of Kikuyu people, protested against British colonial rule and the injustices perpetuated against Kenyan Africans. Leaders such as Jomo Kenyatta emerged as key figures in the struggle for independence, advocating for self-determination and the end of colonial oppression. The British response to the Mau Mau uprising was harsh, marked by violence, detention camps, and human rights abuses. However, the resilience and the determination of the Kenyan people, coupled with international pressure and changing global dynamics, ultimately led to negotiations for independence. Kenya finally gained independence from Britain on December 12, 1963, with Jomo Kenyatta becoming the country's first prime minister, laying the foundation for a new era of self-governance and national identity in Kenya. Algeria represents a unique case in the decolonization process, as it fought a bitter war of independence against French colonial rule from 1954 to 1962. Algeria was colonized by France in 1830, marking the beginning of a brutal and oppressive colonial regime. French colonization of Algeria was characterized by systemic exploitation, land confiscation, and the imposition of French culture and language upon the Algerian population. The Algerian War of Independence, characterized by guerrilla warfare and widespread violence, culminated in Algeria's independence on July 5, 1962, following the signing of the Evian Accords between France and the Algerian National Liberation Front, also known as the FLN. The Battle of Algiers is a 1966 film directed by Guillaume Pontecorvo that depicts the Algerian struggle for independence from French colonial rule. Set in the 1950s, the film portrays the violent conflict between Algerian nationalists and French colonial forces in Algiers. Shot in a documentary-style format, the Battle of Algiers offers a raw and gripping portrayal of urban guerrilla warfare, showcasing the tactics employed by both sides in the struggle for liberation, including acts of terrorism. The film explores themes of colonialism, nationalism, and the human cost of war, offering a thought-provoking and intense cinematic experience that remains relevant to discussions of colonial history and contemporary conflicts. It is free to watch if you would like to check it out on YouTube, and I highly recommend it. It is often taught in several undergraduate courses. Despite the end of former colonial rule, the legacy of French colonization continues to shape the relationship between Algiers and France, influencing diplomatic, cultural, and socioeconomic ties between the two countries. Our last example is that of the Congo. The Congo acquired independence from Belgium after a tumultuous struggle marked by political upheaval and social unrest. Belgium's colonization of the Congo began in the late 19th century under the rule of King Leopold II and was characterized by brutal exploitation of the Congolese people and resources, particularly rubber and ivory. Forced labor, violence, and systemic abuse were rampant, leading to widespread suffering and loss of life among the Congolese population. The Congo Free State, established as Leopold's personal fiefdom, became synonymous with atrocities such as the mutilation and enslavement of Congolese workers. Despite the transition to Belgian colonial rule in 1908 and nominal improvements in governance, the legacy of exploitation and oppression endured. The process for independence culminated in the country's declaration of independence on June 30th, 1960. Patrice Lumumba, a prominent Congolese nationalist and leader of the Mouvement National Congolese, the MNC, emerged as a key figure in the push for independence. Lumumba's call for self-rule resonated with Congolese aspirations for autonomy and freedom from colonial rule. However, Belgium's abrupt withdrawal and the hasty transition to independence left the newly independent Congo grappling with political instability and ethnic tensions. The assassination of Patrice Lumumba in January 1961 further exacerbated the turmoil, plunging the country into a protracted period of political upheaval and foreign intervention. Despite the challenges, however, the acquisition of independence marked a significant milestone in the Congo's history, signaling the country's emergence as a sovereign state on the global stage. The age of decolonization in Africa was known for its diverse struggles, ranging from nonviolent resistance to armed liberation movements, and ultimately how it would come to reshape the political map of the continent. However, the legacy of colonialism, including economic exploitation, social divisions, and political instability, continue to impact many African nations to this day. But I do want to emphasize that despite these challenges, the era of decolonization remains a pivotal moment in African history. It symbolizes the continent's quest for self-determination, sovereignty, and independence from colonial oppression, an example that countries in other parts of the world, such as Asia, would look to and follow in that same period of the era of decolonization. Thank you for joining us today for this presentation on Winds of Change, the Era of African Independence Movements. On your screen, you will see a link to a Google form, which will take you to a survey where you can leave feedback about your experience with this video. That same link is also available in the video description. Your feedback helps us plan for future events and to secure funding, so we really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to fill it out. Once again, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next presentation.